Morning. We are going to see about the peripheral nerve injuries. The anatomy of peripheral nerve. This diagram shows about the anatomy of the peripheral nerve. This is a myelinated nerve fiber, and this is unmyelinated nerve fibers. It consists of layers, that is outer epineurial layer and perineurium. Then this is the Schwann cell, and this is the node of Ranvier, and this is a nerve cell axon, and this is a myelin sheath which covers the nerve fiber. And the nerve fiber, it consists of cell body, microtubules, and axons. And this is the unmyelinated nerve fiber, which is devoid of myelin sheath. This is a Schwann cell and nerve fiber. And the structure in the nerve consists of neuron. Neuron means a nerve cell made up of cell body in the dorsal root ganglion for afferent fibers, in ventral horn for efferent fibers, dendritus, which receives a signal, and the axon, which transmits the signal, and then presynaptic terminal. The glial cells, Schwann cells produce myelin to cover the axon, and myelin to increases the conduction speed. Then node of Ranvier. Node of Ranvier is a gap between the Schwann cells, which facilitates the conduction of action potential and impulse signals. Then nerve fibers. A single axon consists of three types. Large myelinated fibers are fast, small unmyelinated are slow. The efferent fibers transmit motor signals from CNS via ventral horn to peripheral muscles. Afferent fibers transmit sensory signals from peripheral receptors via DRG, dorsal root ganglion, to CNS. Fascicles. Fascicle is a group of nerve fibers surrounded by perineurium. Fascicles unite and divide, then continuously along the course of the nerve. Peripheral nerves, one or more fascicles surrounded by epineurium. Most peripheral nerves are both sensory and motor fascicles. Then epineurium surrounds all fascicles of peripheral nerves, protects and nourishes fascicles. Then perineurium surrounds individual fascicles, provides tensile strength to the peripheral nerves. Then endoneurium surrounds the nerve fibers, protects and nourishes the nerve fibers. Then the blood supply, it's intrinsic, vascular plexus within the endoneurium, perineurium, and the extrinsic vessels that enter the epineurium along its course. Then we will see about the physiology of the membrane events. Action potential generation depends on the attribute that the axon shares the other excitable cells, the resting membrane potential. This is the steady potential difference across the neurolemma with the inside of the fiber electronegative with respect of the outside environment. This potential is generated by the difference in concentration of the certain ions between the inside of the neurolemma and outside. The most important ions involved are sodium and potassium. The concentration gradient develops in response to different permeability of the membrane to ions, which allows the potassium channel that is present in high concentration within the cell to move down in its concentration gradient to the outside. Negative charge within the cell is primarily mediated by the large molecules such as proteins and amino acids that are non-diffusible through the membrane. Thus, the potassium moves through the membrane until the outward force generated by its concentration gradient is precisely counterbalanced by the inward force produced by the developing negativity left inside the cell. The electric potential required to exert restraint is called equilibrium potential for the potassium and can be calculated from the ionic concentration on the two sides of the membrane by the formula known as Nernst equation. This can derive from the basic principles of the thermodynamics and for practical purposes. is exposed by E equal to K log, that is C1 divided by C2, where E is equilibrium potential in millivolts. C1 and C2 are the concentration of the ion of the outside and the inside of the membrane respectively. K is a constant resulting from the thermodynamic equation. The equilibrium potential for potassium is about 88 millivolt with the inside negative relative to the outside. Since sodium is present in higher concentration outside than inside the membrane, its equilibrium potential is about plus 75 millivolt. That is, inside the cell would have to be 75 millivolt positive relative to the outside to prevent inward diffusion of sodium along its concentration gradient. In the resting state, however, the membrane is much more permeable to potassium than the sodium. Thus, the resting membrane potential is about minus 80 millivolt, which is closer to the potassium than to the sodium equilibrium potential. The fact that the value is slightly more positive than the potassium equilibrium potential reflects that the fact there is small inward leakage of the sodium, because sodium is having the negative potential that slightly discharges the potential differences. In the series of landmark papers in 1952, the Hodgkins and Huxley postulated that it's the difference permeability of sodium and potassium, the resultant resting membrane potential, that provides for the axon ability to generate action potential. When the electric current is applied to the axon, the small depolarization develops cathode pole of the electrode, that is interior of the cell, becomes slightly less negative relative to the outside. If the depolarization is great enough and occurs over a relatively short period of time, the axon reaches a threshold. When this occurs, there is a dramatic increase in membrane permeability for sodium. Since in the resting state, both the electrical and chemical gradient strongly favors sodium influx, there is rapid, even explosive inflow of the ion down its electrochemical gradient. This moves the membrane away from the potassium equilibrium potential towards the sodium potential. This membrane potential then moves from being strongly negative towards zero, and actually the inside of the cell becomes positive. That is, there is an overshoot. This rapid influx of sodium soon ceases, hence the membrane permeability to the sodium quickly turn off and the potassium permeability increases and is again predominant. This explains about the since the interior of the cell is now much more positive than the potassium equilibrium, this ion is expelled in response to this electrical gradient, removing the positive charges and consequently repolarizing the membrane. The end result of this entire process is to leave the cell interior with a slightly increase in sodium ions and corresponding decrease in potassium ions. Although the change in ionic balance produced by the single action potential is extremely small, it partially discharges the resin and is left unchecked. And is left unchecked would eventually depolarize the membrane and makes the cell inexcitable. This membrane-bound enzyme that operates via the active process-utilizing energy liberated by cleaving the high-energy phosphates bond in adenosine triphosphate. The enzyme in sodium-potassium ATP base that extrudes sodium from the inside of the fiber in exchange for potassium, which is pumped into the fiber, thereby restoring the proper ionic balance. It is important to emphasize the fact that this active process requiring the use of the metabolic energy as opposed to the purely passive events of action potential that occurs in response to electrochemical gradient across the membrane. Furthermore, the activity of the sodium pump is the housekeeping function and does not participate in the rapid potential changes that constitute the passage of the action potential. In fact, for a large axon, many thousands of action potentials can still be elicited without a dramatic decrease in RMP after sodium pump is poised with metabolic blocking agents. Once the action potential is generated, it must be conducted along the axon. Upon the development of an action potential, the interior of the membrane in the local area has an excess positive relative both to be exterior of the membrane at that point and to be neighboring axoplasm inside the cell. This generates a low current flow that spreads down the axon in accordance with the cable properties of the nerve fiber. And this term refers passive electrical properties of the axon. The net effect of the local current is to depolarize the adjacent segments of the membrane so that it reaches the threshold necessarily to generate another action potential, beginning the process again and continuing the length of the fiber, continuing along the length. Thus, the action potential is conducted along the axon by the sort of sequential depolarization and regeneration. This process has been termed as all or none phenomenon. The requisite threshold, no potential generated, but when this value is achieved, the potential developed with equal amplitude along the entire length and thus doesn't decrement during the conduction. From the above discussion, it will be realized that if tiny membrane segments has been sequentially depolarized for the conduction to occur, this would be a very slow process indeed. According to the law of cable theory, conduction velocity increases in proportion to the square root of the fiber diameter, and thus faster conduction develops with an increase in the size of the axon. This is seen phylogenetically in lower animals, and process reaches its zenith in the squid, where some of the axon of the mantle nerve are 0.5 mm and more in diameter. Increasing conduction velocity by the axon size is inefficient process, and the conduction velocity necessary for the function of the more advanced species would not be possible unless a different method has evolved. Higher animals therefore have developed the myelin sheath that insulated the fiber. As noted above, this sheath laid down by Schwann cell that are linearly adjacent to each other along the axon. At junction between the cells, there is a small gap that the membrane is exposed to the surrounding extracellular fluid. It is at these gaps the node of Ranvier, that is generation of action potential, occurs. In this myelinated fibers, the local current that develops on excitation spreads along the axon to depolarize the membrane at the node instead of next immediate adjacent membrane side. This allows the action potential to jump from one node of nerve to the next in the phenomenon known as saltatory conduction. This greatly increases the speed of transmission, provides for rapid conduction velocity necessary in the nerve system of higher animals. And next we will see about the axonal transport. This has been demonstrated that axon has a very little synthetic capability, and thus the proteins and polypeptides necessary for the maintenance of the neural lemma and internal organelles must be separated from the cell soma. Furthermore, the substance expelled from the distal axonal terminals that are necessary for neurotransmission or for the trophic control of the muscle fibers or other nerve cells must also be supplied by pericardium. The mechanism underlying this supply system has been largely illustrated in the past and is known as axonal transport. And much of the work has been done in cat, but when various animals including frog, ducks, and garfishes and primates have been studied, and data connected to the mammalian body temperature, very similar results have been obtained. Fast axon transport can be studied in vitro by injecting the dorsal root ganglia of the seventh lumbar segment in the cat with leucine and then removing the entire sciatic nerve complex, including the dorsal roots and ganglia proximally and peroneal and tibial branches distally. And a period of about 2 hours is allowed between the time of injection and removal of the nerve from the animal to permit the incorporation of the amino acid precursors into the proteins and polypeptides and their subsequent egress from the cell body into the axon. The nerve is placed in an environment in which the transport will continue. In practice, 2 such systems are employed. The nerve may be placed in the flask of the pre-oxygenated Ringer solution, to which It can be added various agents to affect the non-transport then can be assessed. Axoplasmic transport also continues if the nerve is placed in the sealed metal chamber, in which temperature and humidity are controlled. This device permits electric stimulation of the nerve and continuous monitoring of the resulting action potential. When the experiment is concluded with entire either system, the nerve is then removed and segmentally assayed for radioactivity to allow the computation of the flow rates. In this way, the effect of various experiments parameters on the characteristic of the axoplasmic transport can be assessed. With this method, it has been demonstrated that if the oxygen in the atmosphere is replaced with nitrogen, or if the nerve is exposed to the metabolic poison such as cyanide, transport fails within about 15 minutes. In one measure, the concentration of high energy phosphates in the nerve, it is noted to fall to approximately 50% of the control value of the time when the axoplasmic stops. Coincidentally, um, the action potential conduction ceases at about the same time. Agents that interfere with the glycosis and citric acid cycle also interfere with the transport, although time delay is somewhat longer because of the ability of the nerve to utilize metabolites other than glucose. All the data are consistent with the hypothesis that axoplasmic transport is an active process requiring the expenditure of the metabolic energy. Furthermore, this energy must be available segmentally along the axon because the transport is blocked locally if the small segment of the nerve is covered in the paraffin to prevent oxygenation. Thus, higher energy phosphates apparently are not capable of diffusing from the oxygenated segments into the adjacent hypoxic areas. Although most experimental works has concentrated on proximal disulfide, Rasmussen demonstrated there is a retrograde system capable of transferring the substances from periphery towards the neuronal stroma. It has been postulated that interference with the mechanism is the signal of the for the chromatolysis that occurs in the cell soma when the nerve is injured. Enunciation efforts has been expanded in elucidating the mechanism in which the variety of the substance might be transported in the nerves of different diameters of the same fast rate. One important clue was a discovery that agents that impair the function of the microtubules can alter the isoplasmic transport. Microtubules are linearly arranged organelles with a diameter of approximately 25 nanometer that are presently in many types of the cells and underlie such vital function as mitosis. They have been shown to extend throughout the entire length of the axon and are composed of individual protein dimers, subunits called tubuli. It appears that there is a dynamic equilibrium between the soluble tubulin present in the cytoplasm and that which is assembled into microtubules. Certain chemical agents are capable of altering this equilibrium also. Among those are colchicine, which precipitates the tubulin and has been useful in experimental purification of the substances. Perhaps the most potent of these agents, however, are Vinca alkaloids, widely known clinical methods used in antimitotic effects in chemotherapy of various malignancies and tumors, vincristine and vinblastine. It has been shown that use of these drugs in concentration as low as 1 micrometer can block isoplasmic transport. Furthermore, this effect appears related to the loss of microtubular integrity. Interestingly, colchicine also interferes with the axoplasmic transport. Consideration of the experimental data discussed above allows one to construct the theoretical model of mechanism by which different substances can be bidirectionally transported within the axon. This has been termed the transport filament hypothesis in analog to Huxley sliding filament hypothesis for muscle contraction, and suggested various components are bound to transport filaments, which in turn and moved along the stationary microtubules, much like boxcars along the railroad. The transport filaments are moved by the action of cross bridges, which utilizes the energy stored in ATP. In apparent confirmation of this theory, the relative high level of calcium magnesium activated ATP base has been shown to be present in nerve fiber. Furthermore, nerve also contain high levels of polypeptide calmodulin, which is capable of activating the enzymes in presence of micromolar levels of calcium in the axons. This hypothesis then accounts for the dependence of the exoplasmic transport on the local supply of metabolic energy, and can also explain the sensitivity of the system to agent that uncouple microtubules. From the above discussion, it might be anticipated that satisfactory function of the exoplasmic transport system would require an optimum concentration of various ions in extracellular fluid and consequently inside the cell. This is in fact true, although the mechanism for studying this transport is complicated by the fact that perineurium acts as a diffusion barrier between the two ions as noted above. It was found that one could not alternate the extra axonal environment simply by changing the ionic concentration in the medium bathing the nerve. Therefore, a method was developed by which the perineurium could be stripped of the cat peroneal nerve under the operating microscope, allowing direct experiment manipulation of both extra and intracellular ionic environment. Using this technique, workers found that the concentration of the calcium in the extracellular space must be maintained in the range normally found in vivo order for exoplasmic transport to continue. Magnesium ions is also capable of lowering the calcium requirement somewhat, but cannot substitute for it entirely. These data suggest calcium exerts critical regulatory function, that is binding to calmodulin, allowing later to activate calcium magnesium ATPase present on the cross bridge mentioning above. Other ions may also be important, although the specific relation to the transport mechanism is more difficult to understand. The steroid alkaloid batrotoxin has been shown to hold sodium channel opens, thereby increasing intracellular sodium concentration. This produces depolarization of the cell membrane and also blocks exoplasmic transport in lower concentration than any other pharmacologic agent, yet tested more likely by altering intraaxonal calcium concentration. The observation suggested that physiologically altering intraaxonal sodium by stimulating the nerve to conduct action potential might also be capable of modifying exoplasmic transport. These experiments has been carried out in our laboratory and have demonstrated that provided the rate of stimulation is high enough, the rate of transport decreases by as much as by 15%. Thus, two basic axonal functions of electric conduction and material transport are related through alterations in the intracellular ionic environment. The clinical and EMG picture is identical with that of the axonal meshes and includes a complete loss of motor, sensory and autonomic function and distal degeneration. When the nerve is completely divided, axonal regeneration causes neuroma to form the proximal stem, while laceration and direct missile injury are common causes of this type, which can result in neuron meshes. Then management of peripheral nerve injuries. Advances in instrumentation and microsurgical technique improves our management. Mechanism and extent of injury influences the degree of motor and sensory recoveries. Then this is the we will go for classification of the peripheral nerve injuries. The classification based on the degree of local nerve injuries and are of some use, but they do not take into account and the time between injury and operation nor the sequence phases that may occur in nerve, cell body, motor end plate or target organ. Thus, injuries of identical local severity could be entirely different outcomes depending on the distance between the injury site and the target organ, and whether the surgery is performed at, for example, whether it's 3 months or 2 years. We will see about the classification. This is the description of motor recovery. M0 is no contraction. M1 is returns of perceptible contraction in proximal muscles. M2 is return of the perceptible contraction of both proximal and distal muscles. In M3 are sufficient powerful to act against the resistance. Then M4 is a return of motion as in stage 3, that is that synergistic and independent movements are possible. Then M5 is a complete recovery. Then this is a sensory classification. Grading of sensory is more difficult because of subjective nature and needs to score quality of sensation as per the perception of the primary sensory stimuli. Standard criteria and more precise optic measures for evaluation of functional motor recovery has to be developed, need to be developed. Then this is an important Sedon's classification based on 3 fundamental types of the nerve fiber. Is neuropraxia, axonotmesis, and neuronotmesis. This is a widely accepted classification in peripheral nerve injuries. This is a Sunderland classification. 5 degree of injuries. This is another important classification apart from the Sedon's classification. It includes 5 degrees. Grade 1 is loss of axonal conduction, that is physiological disruption of the nerve supply. Then there is a grade 2 loss of continuity of the axons with intact endoneurium. Grade 3 is transection of the nerve fibers with intact perineurium. Then in grade 4, the perineurium will also be lost and fascicular continuity also will be lost. Grade 5 is loss of community of entire nerve tract, that is entire nerve is separate. Both systems are based on the anatomy of the peripheral nerve and then on the degree of injury to the neural elements and the connective tissue structures and the endoneurium. Both attempt to correlate the degree of damage with clinical symptomology. We have to know. Okay, rest we can continue on the next session. Thank you.